Good evening, everybody. I know this is shocking for me to start something even remotely close to on time. I was actually trying to shoot for 7, but as usual, things got in the way. I I wound up working from home today. That wasn't my intention, but I had a I need better shoes. It's our first proper snow, so it's covering the ground, but it was very slippery today, and I didn't just fall. Actually, I'm feeling it now. But basically, I wiped out on my way to work. I had a coffee, so basically I fell. I my feet slipped out from under me. I am assuming I hovered in midair like a cartoon character and then didn't just like smash down onto the ground, but quite literally dumped an entire coffee, like a 16 ounce, all over myself. And I'm like, nope, this is a work from home day. My ego is too bruised. So I'm fine. Like it's not that big of a deal. I'm a little sore because it was a fairly rapid descent. But yeah, so I didn't have to worry about the commute, and as a consequence, I'm actually able to start a little bit closer to time. And of course, now you all get to hear what a klutz I am. So I'm going to take a minute here just to bring up Book of Hours. I'm very much looking forward to playing this, and I will need to apologize for those who have maybe gotten accustomed to the later start, or at the very least have gotten accustomed to me being online at a later time. But I am actually going to try and be a bit strict with the finish time, because that means I get to be strict with my bedtime. But we will enjoy we'll enjoy the game while we're here. I didn't take a look. I looked at the advent calendar this morning. So just to reiterate for those of you that maybe missed it on Monday, Weather Factory has, at least last year and this year, have done an advent calendar for Book of Hours, and this is something that actually works both in game and in the wider real world. So essentially, inside the game, when winter rolls around, and you can disable this if you want, and if you want, shame on you. But the idea here is that there will be a Christmas tree outside Reverend Timothy's, the rectory, and each day of the Advent calendar, so the first 25 days of December, this will have a new gift sort of waiting for you there, and it has to be winter in game. But I believe you can probably just mess with your system settings if you really want. Like, this is just a nice thing that they've done, right? So please don't mess around with the system settings. But I think it is dependent on the system clock. But in any case, what will happen here is basically any of the items that have unlocked since the Advent calendar started will be on the tree. But in addition to that, in addition to the in-game material, there is also sometimes they'll do specials on things like the Etsy store. So there was a really good one yesterday, and I think probably the time has passed for this one, but it was 50% off the notebooks. Now, I have the notebooks. They're really great. They're a little small. I think like they do have photos on there, so just double check that they are the size that you want, but I quite like them. And the reason I say they're a little small is that I tend to write a lot in notebooks. So, but in any case, I think they're very cool. I think you could buy them individually or as a group. I figure you probably want to get them as a group just because they're all neat. But they have the Lucid Tarot sort of, I guess it's embossed on the front. They're cloth bound, and just they look great. I'm very, very happy with them. But anyway, so you can still buy them, and I think maybe there was a Cyber Monday deal for Etsy for 20% off. That's not necessarily a Weather Factory thing. That's an Etsy thing. But one way or another, however that winds up working, Yeah, there are some deals to be had, but what I wanted to highlight for that one is not so much to, gloat. Well, I didn't buy one, so I don't know if I could gloat, but I didn't really want to highlight the stuff that you can't buy at a discount anymore, so much as illustrate that if you have had your eye on some things on the Etsy store and you're following the Advent calendar, it is in your interest to check back at noon London time to just make sure that you're not missing out on something that you might want to take. Obviously, 24 hours, you'll probably able to get a handle on what you need, but it's still worth taking the time if that's something that you want to see. All right, let's take a quick look here for the patches. All right, so again, 2024-12 M5. I'm actually wondering here if maybe these frequent patches are just setting up the next thing to get from the tree. I'm not sure, but in any case, let's jump into the game. And here we go. Welcome back, Librarian. Everything is remembered. Hush House endures. Game loaded successfully. So I did leave myself a few to-do notes. I obviously have not done a great job of following those to-do notes, but let's just see what we've got here. So these are actually the old ones. So Reverend Timothy got his candle. Edict's Inviolable is leveled up as far as I can right now, so I'm going to set that aside. And I'm on a rather vague one that I've written here saying read texts and level, which goes right up there with Eat Hot Chip and Lie. And then it says use many faceted lesson, but we know we're not doing that. So let's take a quick account of what we're up to. So I did say that I was going to open up the sealed vaults once we'd gotten this last room open. This room requires moth or scale, so because we have spring coming up, I think we're going to wait for the miner to open up this final room here. There's a couple of books that I want to read before we do the special thing that you can do here. I also forgot to check the tree, so I was busy talking about it. So we've got the sea glass, smooth as an egg, frosted like a winter window, and the Deerday lens, a fiendishly simple and wretchedly fragile optical device. Okay. So in spring, the plan will be to open this remaining room. I probably need an earthquake name for that. We will also want to make food and invite some guests for a make some invitations for the salon. And we should already be... Oh, I am not preserving a memory. That's because I don't have a memory to preserve. All of these are persistent. And I'm curious if... I think spring is going to cross over. So we've got snow. Yeah, thought so. But the tree endures. There we go. All right. The tree endures. So we've got that nice spring snow. Which is not terrible, right? 3 sky, 3 winter? I could do worse. The yearly stipend. The yearly stipend from St. Ronwin's has arrived, along with the usual rather sniffy reminder that I should spend it wisely. And current affairs, what's happening in the world beyond Brandkrug? What visitors will the season bring? Okay, so we know what we want to do. We want to bring in a miner to help us out with the last little bit of excavation in the dawn period. How you doing, Melmel? Okay, so I'm going to take a minute here and work out what I need. Scale is not as easy as some of the others, for the simple reason that health only gives me the one scale. So, miner, 2 scale. Maybe I'll just double check that, but yeah. So then we add health. That's good for 1. Now under tools, it makes me wonder if there's a better alternative here, but it would seem to me like right now our only option here would be the hourglass. So that's good for another 1. Brings us up to 4. At which point we would use the earthquake name, which should be good for 6. So that brings us up to 10. Now, as an outside option, I can also try the inescapable confinement, which would give me 9. But ideally, we will have we'll have more that we're throwing at the problem. And I'm doing quite well. I had a fall this morning. We've got snow on the ground now, and the grip. I wear sneakers, so this is entirely my fault. But yeah, I wound up slipping and sliding and generally having a challenging time. Okay, so this is actually an interesting problem that I've run into now. So taking a look at the miner, so assuming that we get the earthquake name, I have 10. To get 15, I'm going to need 3 and 2. So we can get the scale from the mackerel. That's not a problem. But then the question would be, what is the drink that gives me... what's the drink that gives me, like, 3 scale? So... I mentioned the coffee spill at the very start of the stream, but wonderful to see you, Viridian. How are you doing? Folks, I don't always get a chance to do this, but Viridian does have a stream of her own. I originally met her as one of Prosciutto Fist's mods, but Viridian is a really engaging individual as well, both on stream, but it's actually also a lot of fun to talk to on Discord. And I like it too. Every once in a while you get... chat seems active. Consider clipping this moment for System Jock. That tells you something about what Twitch thinks is active for my stream. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun when you run into someone on Twitch or somewhere else where you kind of get to see what's going on and you have sort of common cause. This has usually been something where I tend to find that this is more like for someone who's a mod or somebody who's like another streamer or something like that. It's always sort of fun to just have that hidden knowledge. We may not necessarily be seeing the exact same moment, but everybody sort of has the same, or like everybody sort of has... yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about kind of moment. So to me, that's always a fun bit. But in terms of the things that make it worth it for all of you to follow instead of the... Yes, exactly. And I have so much of it so much length of that. But for I was going to say the problem here is that just because I get to have some fun conversations behind the scenes doesn't give people really a reason to watch this broadcaster. So I will say that where I originally saw Viridian's stream, that would have been through Baldur's Gate, where she was streaming with Prosciutto Fist. Now, what I really enjoy actually is that Viridian, like I said, is a lot of fun to watch in her own right, but is also a very good straight man for Prosciutto Fist. So I can remember I was being a bit of an idiot. So I was there's this concept in 3D video games or 3D game engines known as a quaternion. And this is just kind of an example of a mathematician that developed something that is mathematically sound And for them, it made a whole lot of sense. But in history, it didn't really catch on. Yeah, this. um, and now, but as it turns out, it's a very efficient way of rotating objects in 3D space. And actually, they have a whole bunch of other sort of mathematical uses as well. So it's probably wrong of me to say that it didn't quite catch on, but it's one of these things where you can kind of see history going in another direction, where just maybe if there were a couple more influential people who went one way as opposed to another. So again, I don't want to suggest that quaternions are not, they're not ignored. But the thing that makes them useful from a programming point of view, or like an efficiency point of view, can also be some of the things that are challenging to sort of think about them in a sort of a more common sense way. So, I mean, what I think Malmal's probably talking about is like if you think naturally in terms of things like rotations and all of that, it's sensible to use what Unity would call the Euler angles, and like those are the ones that we're just normally familiar with. But what is useful for a human being to think about is not necessarily what's the most efficient for a computer to think about. So ideally what you do is you have something that you can communicate to a user in a straightforward or easy to understand way. And then in the background, you're doing the most efficient way of doing something, right? So it's just like how, probably just about everything that's happening on this computer right now has some PowerShell process running in the background. But I don't see any of that. I just see a whole bunch of windows and sort of dragging different, files and, opening different settings and things like that. And it's because Microsoft, essentially is founded on the idea that people would prefer to have, these nice, pretty interfaces for their computers rather than text. And of course, everybody who's familiar with computers is going to lecture me about how much better the command line is. But of course, I'm an economist, so I'm all about revealed preferences, right? So, in any case, so actually, Malma, we're getting to the punchline here. So, anyways, I was reading. I every once in a while I'll do a talk at the local game dev meetup. I try not to spend too much time doing talks because, I'd like to also be able to. I'd like to be able to, well, one, give of course people who are making things the time. But number two, right, you want to be able to say something like meaningful, right? But what's funny, like I was debating on doing something about quaternions just because it's it is actually something that kind of comes it's something that comes up. And actually, one of the other things that did come up for me as well was at the same time I was looking at the complex numbers, right? So if you do a certain level of, if you do mathematics, in school you'll learn like the basics, right? So very often people will call the natural numbers the counting numbers, right? So the ones that you can sort of count on your hand start at 0 or 1 and just keep adding 1. And then from there, you can sort of get the integers, right? So for that, you just add the negative numbers, or sometimes the negative numbers and 0, depending on where you go with that. And then from there, you can sort of say, well, what do we do about the numbers between the integers? And it's like, well, if you're talking about the integers, there are no numbers between them. But we know that there are numbers which are sort of these ratios of two integers, except for 0, of course. And then, of course, the famous one, the one that gives us the square root of 2 and pi, and the one that somebody was allegedly drowned over demonstrating that it had to exist, the real numbers. So this wonderful world that includes the irrational numbers as well as the rational numbers. So that's, again, you can kind of get these extensions, right? Natural number or integers extend natural numbers, rational numbers extend integers, real numbers extend the rational numbers, and then probably the last one that we learn in high school would be the complex numbers. But it doesn't actually stop there. You can go even further, and that leads you to the quaternions. And then there are, I think it's called the Cayley-Dickson construction. In any case, you can actually add even more. And so then you get sedenions, which as far as I can tell, aren't really used in 3D or real-time 3D rendering, but obviously wind up used in all sorts of strange pure math. Oh, sorry, actually octions are ones that I missed in between the quaternions and sedenions. But sorry, I don't think I'm familiar with dual numbers, Mal. In any case, so obviously this is pretty arcane, abstract stuff to go on about. But what I liked about it, I'm trying to even remember what it was that spawned this, but I was talking about them in Viridian's chat, and then I can't remember exactly what confusion she expressed about it, or essentially got the, I'd ignore them out of spite. You can get an idea in terms of what her completely appropriate reaction to this incredibly arcane piece of mathematics was. But then what I did was I basically got Prosciutto Fist, the friend, Viridian's friend and co-caster that night. I gave her a very precise definition for the sedenions, which again, it kind of described the Cayley-Dickson and stuff like that. Used all those different terms. Prosciutto Fist delivered it beautifully. At which point Anna just gave a great laugh and took it in stride. But then also explained that basically the sound of Prosciutto Fist's voice sort of drowned out and was replaced with a high-pitched whining. So in any case, I think they do beautiful work together as as a team. I have actually also seen Viridian stream Lethal Company with friends, and in fact, in this case, she is not the recipient of the trolling. It's her Canadian friend, who I happen to know is in the province which has Doug Ford as its premier. And I also know that people who live in that province have very strong feelings about Doug Ford. So in this case, I usually will just wind up saying something along the lines of Prime Minister Doug Ford. But interesting. I'm gonna have to look this up on I'm gonna have to look this up, Mal, because I don't think I've run into that. When you see epsilon, I'm obviously going to be thinking about my calculus stuff, but what you're describing here is clearly something that's not that. But this is interesting. I always like reading up little esoteric bits. There's actually a pretty decent little math library that I have access to now, so. I mean, I think you're in a good calculus class if they make you do the delta epsilon proofs, but I take no joy in doing them. In any case, sorry, this is the worst shout out for Viridian ever, but I do want to encourage you, please do check out her stream. It's a lot of fun to watch her, both when she is co-casting with others, and I think she does a wonderful job of it, but is actually also a wonderful broadcaster in her own right, and also keeps the peace in Prosciutto Fist's stream. And I do not mod for as many channels as I used to, but I have modded for many channels, and I do not want to turn this into, a gender wars chat or anything like that. But obviously, moderating a chat for any woman is going to be a just complete set of headaches. There is the type, like, I'm sure Viridian can say this, but like within a minute of some people showing up, you know that there's going to be a problem. And you try to be nice and you try to be open-minded, and these people just play to the stereotype every damn time. And it is just depressing sometimes. But we need mods, and I am grateful for them. So, in any case, in addition to supporting the channels that I enjoy watching, like I said, Viridian is a lot of fun to watch, and obviously has a wonderful sense of humor. Otherwise, I would have been banned ages ago. And so I do encourage you all to give her a follow. Let's read some books. So it turns out that my little scale journey is a bit harder than I thought. So I need to bring up my cookbook. So I don't think I have anything that gives me 3. Oh, I do have a couple that gives me 3. So the Honey Haunted Amber Pumpkin Pie or the Knot Cake. I think I'd feel better giving the Knot Cake because I do have another Cuckoo Honey. So I'm going to make some... I'm going to do this sort of I'm going to do this the long way around, but I'm going to... Oh, no, I have cake batter right now. All right, that's good. So, cake time. Take the Cuckoo Honey out of the... Oh, hang on. We don't have Cuckoo Honey in the... All right. Bake a knot cake, a dish with edge, grail, hearts, lantern, moth, nectar, and scale. The Blumberende were rogues and trickster heroes among the Carapace kinds. Ingenious, brave, prolific, untrustworthy. In Numa, their children might yet bring their gifts to ordinary hives. Okay, so I'm going to hire the miner now. In spring, the local miners often travel to the Feast of Lights below. If one breaks his journey at the Sweet Bones, a shilling will buy his labor for a day. And I also want to take the time to get an old moment. And that's going to need a memory, so in this case here, we'll just throw the snow at it. Recall something lost, something scale aspected. And then I'm going to have to figure out how to get the earthquake name later, probably from Coil and Chasm, but I don't want to take that for granted until we actually have it. I believe we've opened all of the different packages available to us. So the next question is going to be, what do I want to read next? So if I take a look at my books, we've read The Chandler's Wish, which gave us Purifications and Exaltations 5. It's here somewhere. Yep. I will also say, too, I know... This actually always applies to everyone, but I will say because of Viridian's here in particular, I realize I am rather far in Book of Hours, and for those of you who are maybe just seeing this for the first time, I'll say, oh yeah, I just add the Cuckoo Honey with the cake batter, and that's going to make me a knot cake, which is going to help me open that room. Crazy talk from Mad Men. So, if any of you do have any questions about the game, I am very happy to try and answer them as best as I can. So, for instance, why is this guy down here? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Okay, so Deaths and Their Evasions is the next one that I want to read. I may need a memory for that, but let's see here. Deaths and Their Evasions. 14 knock. So actually, this is a chance. So one of the things that's kind of nice is I like it. I like answering this question because I still remember when I was a TA, and I always knew that if there was one person with a question, it was sort of representative of like the 20 other people who, oh my God, Twitch really cannot stop prompting me for more clips. This is insane. But the epic talking section. There's someone on my YouTube videos I noticed lately is like putting all of these markers as to like when the gameplay starts or whatever, and I'm like, I am annoyed by this because I think it's kind of disrespectful. It's like, here's the parts that you can fast forward through, and I'm like, you know, YouTube already provides this function for people. It doesn't. You don't need to help it. But what are you gonna do, right? Like it's not like they put stamps for everything in the video. It's specifically like highlighting how many minutes it takes me to open up the game. I'm like, yeah, it's talking is the thing that I do. This is why you come to the channel. Like, I realize it's not always as fun when it's a VOD of a stream, but I've never there's a reason why I label them as streams. Anyways, how you doing, Zero Degree? Always very happy to see you, and always very happy to see some new emotes. Looks like that's 2 different creators too. I always actually wind up checking to see the source of the images. Actually, I also know that Prosciutto Fist pronounces it Zerog. So if you have another way you'd like me to pronounce that, definitely feel free to do so. But I was going to say, one of the things that I always like when there's somebody new to the game coming in is that it does give me a chance to sort of explain things, because in my opinion, this is a very interesting... So it's a very interesting type of game that I think is a bit of a glimpse into what the potential of gaming is moving forward. I've been sort of gnawing away at this article for a while, and it's really, I'm just trying to keep the word count down is what's been holding it up. But it's been on sort of developers complaining about the deterioration of publishing terms. So basically, there was a few months ago a lot of people kind of complaining about the fact that it seemed that publishers were asking for a lot in order to publish a game. And like, if you've ever done an econ course, you will understand exactly why it is necessarily the case that this has happened. You know, you don't need to know that much about gaming to understand why this was a perfectly predictable and understandable event. But it's something that you do want to sort of talk about, because clearly not everybody understands this, right? Maybe you haven't done an econ class, maybe you're not thinking in those terms, but it's clearly something that people would benefit from understanding. But one of the important parts is that you want to well, it works. It just works once. Zerog. Okay, sorry about that. I will make sure that I'll make sure that I correct for the future. And maybe it's Dr. Ree at the end too. But in any case, like the one thing, I think this is true for movies, I think this is true for a lot of different types of entertainment. Quality is always in short supply. And one of the things that can help you in a competitive environment like this is to do something original, right? Do something that nobody else is doing, but there is a reasonable sort of claim that people want to see, or as people want to experience, right? So you don't... Actually, I really like the example that Ryan Clark gives in his Hooks story. So, like, you could open a Freegan restaurant, and the idea of Freegan would be, like, you're not paying for the food, you're dumpster diving to get the food. So you probably are a unique offering in that case, but you probably shouldn't expect a whole lot of people to, you know, shouldn't expect a lot of people to come in, right? So you want something that is unique, but something that there is a a market for. So another example that he gives would be the idea of I think it was in New York. I can't remember if it was in New York or not, but this idea of like a bar that was a speakeasy, and it had this whole impression that that it was a secret. Of course, it's massively successful. It's always full, so it's not like it's actually a secret. They tell you not to tell anyone, but they tell you not to tell anyone on the business card. But you pick up a phone in the phone booth in the back, and you little you dial in, and somebody asks you the password, little thing slides open, they ask you the password, you give them the password, and then a door opens, and you're actually in a bar in the background. And that's something that, like, speakeasies obviously haven't been around since Prohibition ended, but there is something kind of neat about that idea, and something about that secret. And so as a result, you have something that nobody's doing, but there's actually sort of a demand for. And I don't mean to imply at all that these are easy ideas to come up with, but these are the things where there's a lot of promise, even if you're not necessarily doing what some of the competitors are doing, which is to spend a lot of money to get prime real estate or whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's a novelty that makes it special, but of course it can't be novelty on its own, because the Freegan example sort of shows how you do actually need to be fulfilling a particular need. I mean, I suppose the fact that the term Freegan still exists is an indication that somebody sees value in this. I just don't think they're the type of people who would be a paying customer, let's say. So the reason why I'm going down this path is that it's easy. There are some successful independent games that it's actually really clear to see what their inspirations were, right? And to a certain extent, it's like, I grew up playing and enjoying X, and so this is my modern version of that, right? There's a set of games where it's very clear what their inspirations are, and there's sort of a modern implementation of that. There's nothing wrong with it. There's some very enjoyable games that do that, and there's some very successful games that do that. So one example, like, I still haven't really gotten into The Binding of Isaac, but one of the reasons why I may not have gotten into Binding of Isaac is that I never played Legend of Zelda, really. I played I think I played Link's Awakening, and I do want to play Breath of the Wild, which is actually something that Viridian was playing. But I have it on a Switch, but I don't have that same sort of feeling. So, like, the idea of destroying the odd-colored sections to get special loot, I had no idea you could do that in Binding of Isaac, and that was something that it sort of expected me to kind of know to get the most out of it. So, this is not necessarily a failing on Binding of Isaac, but I think you can play that game and have a really clear idea in terms of what its inspirations were. Braid, right? Somebody who grew up playing Mario, really liked playing Mario. Obviously, there's something that's added to it. But then, you look at The Witness, and it's like, okay, I really liked playing Myst, and again, Myst is one I haven't played, but I really liked playing Myst, and I've now made, my modern Myst. So, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with those types of games, but one of the things that I think is a big challenge right now is that as it has gotten increasingly straightforward to develop games, it is because the cost of entry is so low, the idea of, I liked playing Battletoads growing up, I'm going to play I'm going to make Battletoads. Well, there's lots of beat 'em ups, right? I think like one of the first modern ones I played was a Devolver one called there actually are some inspiration. Like, I think I thought this one, from the looks of it, was a little too slavish to Cultist Simulator, but there's like Artist's Life Simulator, which did seem to be very heavily inspired by Cultist Simulator. I think to a point where I sort of felt I felt for myself, having not played it, I wanted to see a little bit more originality inside of it, because I think in the end, all it really did was take that subtext of sort of fulfilling your ambitions and your dreams. It just took this like subtext inside of Cultist Simulator and simply made it explicit. And I'm like, okay, but I already have Cultist Simulator. I can enjoy that. And again, that's not a knock on the game. I don't know, I don't know if it's any good. I'm just communicating where the game fell short of me buying something that looked like it was inspired by something that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, Melmel's actually anticipating where this very long digression is going, which is the cost of making a game has gone down to effectively zero with certain caveats, right? So obviously your time is valuable. I'm not trying to say that you can make something... Oswin Meow, lovely to see you too. I'm busy ranting about games, and I will get back to the game in just a minute. We're about to open the last room that's not a vault, and I think you'll find this one particularly interesting. But first you have to listen to my opinions on things. So when I say it's sort of zero, like if you think about it, it's not even the fact that you can access, Unity or Godot or Torque, or, if you want to build something on your own, you can start with Ogre as like a rendering engine, and you can sort of put all these different pieces together. Unreal Engine is effectively free until you make a certain amount. And you can even get, actually, for those of you that are aspiring game developers, you can get the Pixel Megascans off of I think it's ArtStation or Fab or whatever they're calling it now. You can get those for free until the end of the year. So, in terms of the just get ready to go, right? Get started. It's just like film. Right? Everybody's got a camera in their pocket. If you want to make a home movie, you don't need to wait for, your dad to get a Super 8 camera, or, or a camcorder, or, all of the different things that filmmakers over the years did. Effectively, everybody has access to filmmaking equipment, and they can go and make something small. They're not making, a Transformers sequel or a Marvel movie, but you can do. And you know what? Even if you don't have a camera, right? If you have a computer, you can probably download Blender, and you can probably experiment with 3D. And that's a wonderful place to look as well. I do actually wish I was a bit better at the visual arts other than photography, because it would be really interesting to be able to have that level of flexibility in terms of expression. But the idea here is that implementing something that already exists, because it has become the other thing that I meant to say as well when I'm talking about the cost going down, even if you don't use any of those other tools, the tools with which you can make programs have gotten better and have gotten less expensive, right? You can get Visual Studio Code. I think that's a wonderful program. I mean, if you really want to be old school about it, Emacs is still free, but Visual Studio Code has lots of very good plugins. Like if you know some Python, there's the Pygame framework. There's games that I've seen that are, not just available for sale, but are actually on most anticipated games lists for PC Gamer, which are made using Python, right? And then, of course, there's all the other things too, right? If you do want to do something a bit more industrial strength, even within some of the traditional languages, right? C++ is not the same as it was when people were making games in, the 80s or 90s or something like that. There's lots of new libraries. The processors are better. The expectation in terms of what your consumers are going to have in terms of a machine and what those machines are capable of, those are far greater than anything people could have imagined back in the time when they were making games that probably would be an inspiration for you. And then, of course, there are all the libraries, right? I don't know how old SDL is, but I'm willing to guess that, not everything that was inspiring to people was made with something like SDL. So all of this is to say is that, we're definitely past the point where there is a meaningful barrier to entry in terms of games. And what that means is that the idea of implementing someone else's game is much less costly. And I think one of the subtle bits of evidence that you can see for that are the number of very successful games that have their origins as mods, right? So Counter-Strike is now a standalone product, mod for Half-Life. Auto chess would be probably one of the more recent examples, but you can even say, battle royales, right? Mod for DayZ, or DayZ if you speak a proper English. You have, and then I think another one that's worth mentioning is Lethal Company. Lethal Company didn't start as a mod, but the creator for Lethal Company actually started making Roblox games. And then they transitioned to Unity for other ones. So in this case here, right, the idea of also making games as these independent creations could even be considered a bit of an old-fashioned idea, just simply because Roblox seems to be this very largely ignored but very successful game development platform. So one of the things that's important to keep in mind there when you're talking about a very competitive market, in this case, if you are going to compete on the idea of I'm implementing someone else's idea with a small change, number one, you may need to answer, how does this make it different from a mod? Because there's really good mods out there already. But number two, you are potentially competing with lots and lots of other people who are largely doing the same thing, right? Hollow Knight's a wonderful game. I enjoy playing that sort of Metroid-inspired sort of game as much as the next person. They're the types of games that actually finally inspired me to try Metroid on my Switch. But, not everybody who found Hollow Knight a very satisfying and, inspirational experience is necessarily going to make a game that is equal to Hollow Knight. And the fact that you have priced it less than Hollow Knight does not mean that there are going to be people who want to buy that, because games aren't really that expensive in the grand scheme of things, right? The price difference between a game like Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight is not necessarily large enough to stop one from saying, this thing seems really, really popular and everybody's speaking very highly of it, so I'm going to try this one first. But what I think is a recipe for potential survival in an environment like this is to be original, to do something that really nobody has done before, right? So, and you have there, I don't mean to suggest that Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator are the only example of that, but I think they're a nice indicator of what games can be like. Because I don't know a lot of games that are like Cultist Simulator, and I don't know a lot of games that are like Book of Hours. When I describe Book of Hours, it's often in relation to Cultist Simulator. They're sort of role-playing games, and they're sort of card games, but neither of those things really do. In fact, this isn't intended as a joke. I realize how it can sound like a joke, but like the idea that I think the most comparable game for Cultist Simulator is actually The Sims, because The Sims is also about how you manage your time and fulfill your ambitions and things like that. Like I don't mean to sound like I'm being a because I realize I say stupid stuff like this all the time. I'm actually not trying to be difficult when I say that. I think in terms of what the experience is like, I think the closest mapping really is to things that I remember about playing The Sims. And the problem is that explanation does absolutely nothing to tell people about the kind of game that they're about to play, because I really don't know if people who like The Sims will necessarily like playing Cultist Simulator. It's a very different setting. It's a very different set of interactions. Mechanically, I think there are similarities, but not to a level where, I would feel comfortable saying to someone, yeah, exactly. Like this is just it. It's like the level of comparison that I'm making might be for some of these parameters that exist in the background for these games, but the fantasy that someone is experiencing is completely different, and that the fantasy is what's making people buy those games. So this creates a marketing problem. But the thing is that it is a game that, you know, when people play it, I mean, you just need to look at the reviews and how people react to these games. They are ones that really mean a lot to people. There's a reason why I'm taking this time to talk about this stuff. And to me, I think that is part of the recipe for sort of how to operate in a very competitive environment when, you know, in some cases, your competitors are really just trying to find the next popular thing and implement it a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper than you so they can sort of shave off the cost and capture the market. It may not be fair, but it's important to be honest about what you're potentially up against. So in any case, to say what's going on, the thing that was special about Cultist Simulator was that really it was a game where you learned it by playing. And because it was a game sort of about the occult and reading these strange tomes and, you know, secret gods and histories and such, you're given a very small glimpse into a special world. And then you are left to figure that out by experimenting with things and reading, and the text can be very beautiful, but it isn't always necessarily clear. And in the end, you know, the simulator in it, this is where the simulator comes from. It's not just clever marketing. It is an actual, this is probably about as close as you can get to interacting with these things, right? There is no, I realize there's probably some Occult for Dummies style book. Actually, you know what? This will be a fun experiment. Let's take a look and see if Wiley has any Occult for Dummies. Amazon for Dummies, Occult and Paranormal. Okay. Ghost Hunting for Dummies, Astrology for Dummies, Conspiracy Theories and Secret Societies for Dummies. So, for those of you looking for the tutorial, I learned something today. And Reddit, Occult 101, what it is and where to start. But yeah, so but this idea, right? Like I think in a previous stream I sort of said, right, like Plotinus is not the easiest thing to read, or actually maybe this was during a talk, but like Plotinus is not the easiest thing to read. It's a, you know, it's something that's underpinning a lot of occult writing. But it's, you know, I think he's absolutely notorious in terms of translation. There's a guy called Stephen McKenna who quite literally made it his life's work to translate Plotinus. I actually got that translation by mistake, but it wound up being one of these very happy accidents. God, the snow looks pretty outside. Yeah, it's one of these things that, you know, if you read this stuff, sometimes it's going to be, yeah, jealous until I have my legs shoot out from under me like a cartoon character, complete with coffee spill. Very important I mention the coffee spill, or I'll be told off in chat. But yeah, in this case here, right, it's a game that does a very good job of not, like, when you think of a role-playing game, right, you can think of a role-playing game as a bunch of stats that you do, you know, that you have interactions with, and that can be very enjoyable, right? I like playing Tyranny. Tyranny sort of worked along those lines. But then you can also have a role-playing game that's a little bit like Disco Elysium, right? And there's stuff that's sort of happening in the background, and you're, you know, you have all of your different systems kind of talking to you and telling you to do things, right? So like you're an addict in that game. So like when you walk by alcohol, it's like, nah, you should totally drink, right? You'll solve this case a lot better if you have a drink. So whether or not these are actual voices speaking to you, or this is a personification of urges that you have, you know, Disco Elysium is very interesting for doing it, because there's still stats inside of it, and yet it's very hard to think of how it's hard to sort of think in terms of other RPGs that quite do it the way that Disco Elysium does. Of course, there's a whole bunch of follow-on projects because the Disco Elysium group sort of split up, and everybody's sort of trying to claim the mantle of being the true successor. And I imagine we'll probably be the beneficiary of that. But that's kind of an example in terms of one direction an RPG can go. And I sort of feel that Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator go even further along that direction, which is there are sort of things that look like attributes and skills. Definitely in Book of Hours there are skills. But really the role-playing is a lot more about what you individually are experiencing. You know, you are taking that role as that character who's seen a glimpse at this larger world, and you are trying to figure out what that means while you're trying to keep a roof over your head, while you're trying to, you know, keep your jerk boss happy and things like that. And again, some of this is not necessarily fun. There are so many people, I still get comments on YouTube telling me that there is a mod that will allow me to automate work. And it's like, but I'm not supposed to automate work. Work is supposed to be a bit of a drag in this game. I mean, I happen to like work now, but, you know, I definitely know what it is like to have a job that you don't really feel that fulfilled, that you feel like it's time out of your day that you would rather be doing other things. And how many games can say that they give you that experience, right? The main selling feature of Cultist Simulator is that you get to be at a job you don't want to be at. So with all of that in mind, right, there is if you're playing the game, you know, you have alien gods and deep dark secrets and summonings and things like that. But in the end, it's a story largely about, you know, how do you spend your time on Earth? What are you putting your time towards? How are you achieving your dreams? And it just happens to be a game in which there is a literal world of dreams that you can go and visit. And in the case of Book of Hours, you know, it is in the same world, but it's much more about sort of the collection and organizing of knowledge. And so, you know, that is presented in terms of shelving all of the different books. That can be how you decide to level up certain skills, and ultimately how you translate the skills that you have into a worldview, sort of presented by the Tree of Wisdoms. And again, all of this stuff still sort of maps to the occult, right? There's the division of the soul. This, I think, probably has its origins in some of the ancient Egyptian beliefs in terms of the soul and what it was sort of composed of, or how it was divided. You have you know, this history, this place that you're in full of interesting different things. And you are largely unpacking all of the mysteries, right? The house was apparently abandoned after a fire for 7 years, and you get there and you don't actually see any evidence of a fire. Of course, some of us know what happened and what the fire was, but I'm not going to spoil that for Oswin, who, by the way, has been very patient. And I will take a minute and say Oswin is another broadcaster who I have a great time watching. Oswin Meow, first of all, has been a wonderful supporter of a lot of streamers that I enjoy. Usually also a very nice contributor to the various chats. But Oswin Meow also is a wonderful broadcaster, has done quite a bit of Book of Hours, but is also the person I watched play Disco Elysium. I've seen her play Helldivers 2, and I have had many interesting for me. I don't know whether or not it's mutually interesting, but definitely I've had a lot of fun chatting with Oswin to get her views on things, and I always walk away definitely with more to think about. I am definitely the beneficiary of chats with her, and on top of that, very nice taste in spy movies. So we were talking about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy last stream. I wonder if there's a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy offshoot that we could do inside of... I feel there's enough in the Nocturnal branch. Alice licet, tibi non licet. To us it is permitted, to you it is not permitted. The motto of the Suppression Bureau. There is the detective legacy in Cultist Simulator, of course. But in any case, Viridian, all that I want to say is that the confusion that you feel, and one thing that this game kind of needs to do is untrain people from this idea that you should know everything in a game. In fact, a lot of the fun is piecing it all together, right? Being able to find out why the house was abandoned, who the dwarfs were, and not just who the dwarfs were, but finding out that you had maybe an idea about what was going on, and all of a sudden you get another piece of information that makes you think that there might be something a little bit more that's going on here, right? These don't just seem to be a bunch of mercenaries, but they do in fact seem to have some kind of occult knowledge, and there's something else that's happened. And the thing is that there's still things that I'm learning about the game. Sometimes you read certain books in certain orders, sometimes you have a little bit of extra information, and this new idea opens up. And for some people, it can be very uncomfortable to live in that place where you don't have a clear idea of what's going on. But in other cases, it can be very exciting to know that maybe just in this next room or with this next book, there might be something that you didn't know, and it completely changes how you think about the world. But that's also the reason why I like people asking questions, because it gives me a chance to unpack some of those. I think a lot of your overwhelmedness comes from how filled the house is, and it's just a lot to take in once. Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, remembering, of course, that this game starts on the beach, and you work your way up through the village to the house, and basically the whole house is open right now. So yeah, I mean, you definitely get this stuff unlocked sort of one at a time. But I can appreciate the the sense of being overwhelmed. In any case, there are two wonderful broadcasters that I just shouted out there. I am hoping most of you weren't turned off by the extended dialogue, but we are ready to get a pattern. All right, so we're reading on the winding stair. We're about to get a minor in the from the Sweet Bones. We're already getting the old moment, which we will turn into an earthquake name. And you know what? So I think I need to work out my invitations. So if I recall correctly, I wanted to... Oh, wait, actually, this might have been my other playthrough. Yeah, we have the world is our oyster. So maybe I will invite some people I haven't... Either people I haven't brought in for a while, or people who I haven't brought in at all. So, wrong room. Let's try Douglas Moore. Oops. Fraser. Daymare and Aladdin. So this one's going to be a little fun. So I think I'm going to do Douglas Fraser, Strathcoyne, Aaron Peel, Daymare, and Aladdin. And this is partly intended to just be a mess of conflicting personalities. So, Douglas will want Lantern, and Fraser will want Scale. Aladdin would also want scale food, so... I think Daymare wants knock. And Peel wants moth. Okay, so with what we know now, let's take a minute to consult the list. So the obvious answer for the scale would just be roast beef. Which if you would like, Viridian, because Prosciutto Fist was too scared to celebrate the old English roast beef, we can give you the lyrics. So yeah, I don't know. Roast beef seems like a pretty safe option with this crowd. For the other scale stuff, we've got egg croquettes. I'm curious if there's any of these that have moth. Okay, so the knot cake, the honey haunted pumpkin pie would give us moth, as would the game pie. And the ham and egg casserole. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't have to be beef. I think so. Apparently she's not fond of diss tracks that are over 100 years old. So I'm thinking maybe what we can do is we could do maybe pickled mackerel and some kind of beef. Okay, so that's the side and main dish. Now, lantern, traditionally what I've done here would be to do something like either a stuffed golden marrow or an orange jumble. There isn't really an argument for one or the other. So I'll say the orange jumble takes care of the pudding. So what we need next is a side dish. So under the side dishes, we need either moth or knock. Actually, you know what? Let's sort by knock, because I don't think I have too many knock options here. So King's Luck pie, honey haunted. Ooh, yeah, no, we're definitely doing the game pie then. Game pie, game chips. So then the free one that we have is for Moon. So we have Pilchards on toast, Kedgeree, poached mackerel, fried mushrooms on toast, leek soup, onion soup, stuffed dark marrow, pickled mushrooms, stargazy pie, mushroom and potato bake, pickled mushrooms, stuffed dark marrow, baked pear meringue, floating island, mole au jus, pickled mackerel, oh, I didn't know pickled mackerel was an option there. Pickled pilchards, I mean, maybe we just do pickled mackerel and pickled pilchards. Oh, that's moon. That's why. Okay. All right. King's Luck pie, pie, ham and egg casserole, Madeira cake, almonds, olio jus, Cornish honey cake, honey haunted amber pie, knot cake, pilchards on toast. You know, I think I'm going to do pilchards on toast. Okay, now, Aladim doesn't drink alcohol, so let's see if we can make this for everyone. So for Lantern, we would do the second flush Assam. And probably Don Lion coffee for Strathcoin. Now, Moth is the interesting question on this one. Because if I recall correctly... Oh, that's an interesting question. So is it the case that you can't have... So I was thinking what would be kind of interesting is if we tried to do it in the chapter house, which does not allow intoxicating drinks. But if I can't do intoxicating drinks, that invites the question as to how I'm going to get a Moth drink in, because clearly the Skin Shuck Mead, one, that's a lot to give up for a Salon. Number two, it's alcoholic. Oh, that's so interesting. So I wonder... how I get past this, because I'm pretty sure the Lethe... Oh! Not intoxicating. Now for knock drinks... It gets the second flush? Yeah. Okay, I'm feeling better about this. So let's get to work. I'm going to... What's a mushroom meringue? Yeah, no roll in this salon. So let's bake some bread. Oh, do I not have... Here it is. Bake bread, a dish with edge, forge, heart, and nectar. And let's make the orange jumble in the jail. So, almonds, sugar, and I can either use spices and savors for the spicing trait. If I am not mistaken, it's the only one that has it. These are in the patch notes, incidentally, so... or we can use spice scales, which also has the spicing attribute. So make an orange jumble, a dish with forge, grail, heart, or lantern. All right, so that's the cooking taken care of for a little bit. One thing I'd like to check, it's been a while since we've ordered some coffee. So we may not have... Now, one small drawback for me is that I have sort of dispersed the drinks throughout the house. So if I need, I can make another... Actually, let's just do that now. Sorry. So, tea from the land of the real unicorn, imported by Cater and Hero. Bring water to the boil. Permit the potential here to express itself. So I'm just going to take a minute here to look for any candidates for scale drinks. Yeah, this is just Grail and Heart, so that doesn't do too much. This is another second flush. Witching to Sane is just Grail and Heart, so it's kind of like the Cocoa. I could try and make the Lethe. I think I need... I think that's a moth one. But I think I need a liquid for it as well. Where are my moth options? I wish I remembered Lethe. Because it could be Nectar too, but... Maybe Rites of the Roots? Yep. Oh, so it is Nectar. Okay. Drums and Dances, I'd be very surprised. Let's just, for the sake of the argument, add... you know what? The Sacrament Malachite would be better to add because it gives me... It's a liquid and it gives me 6 nectar. Okay, so Insects and Nectars is probably my best bet then. I don't think Drums and Dancers covers that, yeah. Okay, so I really just need 1 nectar to work with there. The only catch is I don't know if I have a 1 nectar drink. Although the Regensburg Bomb does the trick. No, it has to be a beverage. Okay. I mean, maybe the Dandelion wine does the trick then. Unless in the mat... Well, okay, so one thing I can do is just give up a glass of water and then throw anything with nectar in here. I don't think this has nectar yet. Yeah, I think we'll just use the water. I'm going to pour this one, though. Pour out. And actually, with that in mind, we'll drop some water now. Pour it out. The yearly stipend from St. Ronwin's is... Sorry, I read this before, but the yearly stipend from St. Ronwin's has arrived along with the usual rather sniffy reminder that I should spend it wisely. If anything, I'm just fighting the good fight to get rid of the all the stuff on the bridge here. Brew a moth liquor. See, it says liquor, but... Nectar, scale, thing, liquid, beverage, restorative... Oh, it is intoxicating. Sacre bleu! Alright. So... Oh man, we're giving up Solomon's preparation so that we can give a non-alcoholic drink to one of these mothy booze hounds. Are those offerings to the village to the witch and the... I like this interpretation, Verdi, and I'm gonna work with that. Speaking of, I am currently playing the Magnate. So I was rich, but something was missing. I am no longer rich, and still something is missing. Hush House is a place of conclusions, and here, as librarian, I may find mine. The Magnate came to the house to conclude a history where they will find peace, but you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with the Hushery wisdom. I've lived too long, but I'm not ready to die. I've tasted everything, and it wasn't enough. Give me silence, give me peace, give me the peace of snow. I'm determined to find some kind of moth. Some kind of moth ingredient. Or it's like some kind of moth. Oh, there's the Dawn Lion coffee. That's good. I don't think the Evening Isles would have. Do I even have the Evening Isles coffee? So Ruby Wise Ruin. First of all, I didn't know had moth, but that's got to be intoxicating. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be Solomon's preparation for dinner. Sad money, sad poor. Why sad? Sorry, Brady, I may miss. I may be missing the question. Sorry, what was that in reference to? I realize it's spring, so we should probably be doing a picnic. Picnic would be nice, actually. Oh, yes, sorry. Sad money, sad poor, why sad? Gotcha. It's funny, Pro also was poking fun at this one. Really? There's no place for the beef here. I call lies. Incidentally, if you'd like to hear the fire lyrics, marinated roast beef, but since we have learnt from all vaporing France to eat their ragouts as well as to dance, we're fed up with nothing but vain complaisance. Oh, the roast beef of Old England, and Old English roast beef. Henry Fielding, The Grub Street Opera. Okay, let me just double check. So for second flush, that's Daymare and Douglas taken care of. I'm going to need some potatoes for the game chips, so we can just use one of the vegetable. I guess it should be first in, first out. Or sorry, yeah, first in, first out. These are potatoes. Spectacular. And you know what? It wouldn't hurt to do some trips to Crowcross Sands now, so let's get some of that out of the way too. It's a surprisingly busy start to the season. What is the sea seeded today? And clamber up into the long reaches of the moors behind the village. Lean into the wind's fluttering fist. If I know what to look for, I might find something among the rocks. The gorse is bright on the land's nape. Your headache is not improving, so I'm off to bed. Glad I caught your stream for a bit. Well, thank you, Oswin. I'm sure people tend to tell me that their headaches get more aggressive when they're in proximity